Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's 1 Million by 1 Million Strategy Roundtable for Entrepreneurs. 1M1M, as you know, is the first and only global virtual accelerator in the world with the mission of helping 1 million entrepreneurs reach $1 million and beyond in annual revenue. And in support of that mission, we do these free mentoring sessions week after week after week. We've been doing this since the autumn of 2008. So coming up to 10 years of consistent, tireless work, and we've had over 60,000 people participate in these, and we hear from them over the years and how they have progressed. We don't hear from all of them, so we don't know what happened to all of these people, but we keep hearing, about progress, and it's wonderful. So, and this is really global, in any session you could encounter people from, 3 different continents often, and we don't engineer it. It's a first come, first serve, so you could also end up with 3 people from California. But it's really open to everybody, and it's a completely democratized process for entrepreneurship acceleration and incubation. So today, the recording is going to be available on our YouTube channel, 1M1M Roundtables, where you'll find recording of all our prior sessions, completely transparent. Everything is available. If you are live tweeting the show, please use hashtag 1M1M. And our 2 Twitter handles are at 1Mby1M and at Romana. Please follow one of those, and there's a ton of interesting, rich content that we publish through those channels. These are the call-in instructions. I'm not ready to open the line for calling in yet, but this is a roundtable, so we would like you to participate as much as possible as we go through the program today. We have some pre-planned programming first, and then we're going to open up the line and discuss with you what you want to discuss, what your issues are. We start today, however, with Gary Little, co-founder of Canvas Ventures, and Gary has been in this industry for a long, long time. Welcome, Gary. I see that you're doing something new, so we'll have a chance to catch up.
Sarana, thank you for inviting me to join your panel today.
Well, Gary, I think what would be great for our audience is to hear about a bit of your backstory before Canvas Ventures, and then we'll double-click down into Canvas Ventures, your positioning, what are you trying to do differently. But you have been in this business for a long time, so what have you done, what have you seen, and how has the industry changed in the long time that you've been playing in these pools?
Yes, thank you. So I have been in the industry. I've had the opportunity to be in the industry for really 30 years now. So I've had a chance to see a lot of ups and downs, and more ups and more downs, and that's part of the drama and the fun of the venture industry. It is cyclical. I started as an electrical engineer. I also was in sales and marketing at IBM, then went back to business school. And that's where I first heard about venture capital. Never heard of one before. It was a summer job when I was working at IBM. I met a venture capitalist. I said, oh, this is great. It's kind of a combination of engineering and business. And, how many of you are there? And I went out and started just researching and ended up joining the Rockefeller family's fund called Venrock straight out of business school. I did that for about 2.5 years based in New York City. And what I realized at that time was just having a few years of work experience at IBM and an MBA really did not prepare me to be a venture capitalist. At that time, entrepreneurs were probably in the early 40s, late 40s when they were starting businesses, and I didn't have much to offer to them. So I had the itch to go, be on the operating side. So the next 10 years, I spent at Sun Microsystems, which was at that time still a young company, and Apple, and a variety of positions, sales and marketing, posted in Hong Kong, opening up offices overseas, and then later internationally across the globe, and then ending up running product marketing for the Solaris operating system at Sun. And then I went to Apple and had a variety of roles there, including international marketing, head of North American sales for channel sales, and ultimately running the general manager and SVP for the company, running their Power Macintosh division and the displays business. And it was at that point that I said, hey, you know, this would be a good time to go see if I can take the skills I've learned and go find a startup to run. I didn't have ideas to found one, but I wanted to go meet up with some tech entrepreneurs and see if I could help them build and scale a company. And that was 20 years ago, and that's when I ended up meeting a bunch of venture guys again, and I got pulled over to the venture side instead of running a company. And I've been really enjoying, and the difference was after 10 years working at Sun and Apple, I really felt like I did have something to offer to the entrepreneurs in terms of connections, network, ideas, guidance, and I found I really enjoyed what I was doing and could add value there.
And that was Morgenthaler, right?
Yeah, so I joined Morgenthaler 20 years ago, and Morgenthaler was one of the earliest venture firms. In fact, this year it's celebrating its 50th year in business. So I'm still a Morgenthaler partner in its older funds, but Morgenthaler over 50 years did not only IT, which I'm a part of, but life science and buyouts, had multiple offices, and it was a larger entity. We raised an $850 million fund 18 months after a $600 million fund. And so it was, it was a large enterprise. And what we decided to do was really have the information technology team, members of that team formed Canvas Ventures, members of the life science team created Lightstone, and members of the private equity team created Morgenthaler Private Equity. And so our inaugural fund at Canvas was in October of 2013. So we're about 4.5 years old. It was a $175 million fund. We were successful in raising our second fund of $300 million. So we're just under $500 million under management and having a lot of fun. We really focus in on Series A and Series B investments. I'd say traditional early-stage venture capital. Our investments range from, I'd say, $5 million to initial investments, $5 to $10 million. Probably the average has been about $7 million. And total investment ranges from about $10 to $20 million over the life of a company. We focus almost exclusively on software, and the business is made out of software, and that's everything from mobile and internet-based and SaaS-based companies and marketplaces. What we
B2B, B2C, both?
Both. I focus more on the B2B, and so we call it the new enterprise, as enterprise trying to reshape themselves. I look for opportunities there. I have a partner, Rebecca Lynn, who is strong in fintech and healthcare IT, and then a partner, Paul Schaub, who's strong on marketplaces. He led an investment house, which you probably heard of, which combines kind of SaaS for designers with a marketplace to buy furnishings on the back end. That's done very well, and he's been involved with helping us build our marketplace background. Rebecca was involved with Lending Club and a couple other fintech companies that have done really well. Probably the best known companies that I've been involved with, that I'm still involved with, are MuleSoft and Evernote.
So couple of questions out of what you said. A traditional Series A today is kind of Series B in terms of what people are looking for metrics-wise. So entrepreneurs are being very capital efficient, and they don't, in Series A, often they're not looking for $5 to $10 million, whereas they're looking more like maybe a $5 million round, so a couple of partners putting in 2.5 each kind of scenarios. How do you parse the change in the dynamics of venture capital, what you need to have to raise a Series A, what is the definition of a Series A, and so forth?
Yeah, very good question, because the definitions are changing. As you said, Series A used to be what's now a seed, so it has changed. The way we see it is there's many firms making money available on an angel and seed basis. A lot of $50 million funds that maybe club together, and often in notes that provide founders the opportunity to build something and bring it to market and see if it, if it has traction. Where we typically get involved, regardless of whether it's called a Series A or pre-seed, whatever it is, but I'd say on the B2B side, it would be when companies are kind of approaching that 1 million in average recurring revenue stage. At that stage, it's still very early. Most of the sales have been done by the founders. They may or may not have salespeople in the company. If they do, they're probably one or two. They typically do not have a head of marketing or a head of sales. The engineering is done by the founders. So it's really a technical team that has gone out and on their own sold to some initial customers. If we say, gee, if engineers can figure out how to sell and get $1 million in ARR, there's probably something there. And if we get involved, at that stage, the company does deserve usually $5 million or so of investment, and we would put that in all ourselves along with the early investors. Sometimes bring in a small follower, but rather than spraying our investments around among a lot of investments, we consider ourselves conviction investors. So we make fewer investments, but if we like them, we try to get a good stake in the company, and we may be involved with that company for 10 years or more. So we try to choose wisely, and then really commit to helping that company grow. What we do.
So your take on the Series A is that you would just take the whole round of a $5 million round and not try to split the round. Makes sense.
That's right.
That makes sense.
And I think for I'd say the traditional venture firms at that Series A, you can only be on, if you're taking a board, you can only effectively manage 7 to 10 boards, and more realistically 6 to 8. So if you're only making 1 to 2 of these investments per year, and if it takes 5 to 7 years to exit a company, you're on those 6 to 8 boards. So you have to choose very wisely, and if you are choosing that wisely, you want to make sure you have a sufficient stake in the company. So it's not a drive-by investor where, I don't know if I'll put 5 in, but I'd put 2 in if somebody else puts 2 in. That's not ours. We would like to make a what I call a conviction stake, because we believe in what the company's doing and commit to helping that company be successful.
But just to point out,
you were asking about where we play. So if the angel and seed guys get it to $1 million, the entrepreneur is really picking their board member in that Series A, or when we would get involved, we would want a board seat. So you're looking for a relationship that's going to be long-term. And if we're successful over in the next round or the round after that, the company would be at $10 million in ARR, and that's where the growth stage funds would kick in. So we see our role as bridging companies from that angel seed stage to the growth stage. And once we have a stake, we're on really common terms, similar terms as the founder. They have ownership, we have ownership, and we want to make the right decisions to hang on to that ownership while investing to build a successful company. Our mission is not to put a lot of money to work, it's to make something of the equity that we have and that the founders and the management team have.
What about geography? Where do you like to invest?
Since we're a small firm, we just have 3 partners now. Our target is to probably never have more than 4 or 5 partners. And since we're early, our main task when we get that technical team is to help them recruit their head of sales, head of marketing, at some point probably head of product, head of engineering, as a lot of times the technical founder ends up moving towards an architecture or CTO role, not always. And then the VP of Finance or CFO. I can tell you the last investment I made, it's been less than a year, we've actually recruited a CEO, CRO, CMO, CFO, VP of product marketing, and we've had multiple discussions with every sales rep in the company, and that's the job of the first year, is building out the management team so it can scale to that 10 million and beyond. Oh, and so to do that, I was going to say, to answer your question, to do all that hiring, it really doesn't make sense for us to be making investments overseas. And in fact, it's that much harder to do it out of the Bay Area. So our primary focus is here in Silicon Valley, where we can use our network and not just meet with the finalists on the candidates, but sometimes take first meetings with candidates and meet a lot of people to try to get the best team. And you can't do that if you're just flying in and flying out. Having said that, there are some trusted, like chairmen, people that we trust that'll spend a day a week with the company doing some of that heavy lifting, and we have that network in New York, and so we've made several investments in New York City, but to date, we've been primarily Bay Area with a few investments in New York City.
Okay. So you have a question from the audience, which probably is a reasonable question to elaborate. Minu Saburi is asking, please define conviction investor versus traditional investor.
Well, conviction investor, I think that's a term that we've coined internally. It's just the way we think. So, what does that mean? First of all, since we are we're a sizable venture firm with a $300 million fund and nearly $500 million under management, but we're also not a $1 billion fund trying to put money to work in all sectors. So, like any company that we would advise, focus is really important. So for us to be successful, we try to pick some sectors and focus on those and get knowledgeable about those sectors and hopefully know more about those sectors and have a better network in those sectors than the generalists. And so we call that thesis investors. In terms of where we, the areas that we've made our largest number of investments in, they have been in what we call the new enterprise, that's the B2B, fintech, digital health, which we're lightening up on right now, and then marketplaces, which we have a heavy focus on. I'd say current trend across all of those has been the use of AI to enable opportunities there. So in those areas, we spend a lot of time, we look at a lot of companies, we try to find the company we think that has the best opportunity, which is usually the core team with a value proposition that we can build around, that can build a lasting, enduring company, and say, okay, for that one, we're going to make an outsized investment in that company. And what we mean by conviction is we're not hedging our bets by playing with 3 different companies and a little here, a little there. we try to pick the winner and put all our chips on that number, so to speak. And so that's our
what are some of the highlights of your portfolio that are worth discussing in, as cases and points of your investment thesis?
Yeah, so maybe the best, when people say, hey, what are you looking at, what's interesting, the easiest thing is to say what we just did. So I can tell you what my last two investments and more the reason why. One of the investments was a company called Kinetica, K-I-N-E-T-I-C-A, Kinetica. Kinetica is basically it's a relational database that can basically do SQL queries natively on streamed data that's coming in at high velocity, billions of rows per minute. It can do SQL calls. If you can do SQL, you can then do things like have Tableau run natively on this database, as an example. Now, why did we make this investment? We were looking for opportunities where all this data that the world is generating, and the world is generating, I think half of the world's data has been generated in the last 2 years. So, and that's just increasing at a high rate. And we know from Facebook and Google, those companies that have the most data and can make use of the best data win. And data is coming in from IoT devices, sensors, other computers, from the internet. Companies are just awash of data, but they have a really hard time processing it. So we were looking for both what new opportunities are enabled by data, and certainly AI machine learning is a good example of trying to do that. And so we have investments around that thesis, but also around what breaks. And certainly relational databases, think Oracle and Microsoft, you name it, they break when you try to flood a lot of data in and try to query it at high speeds. So what Kinetica did is they wrote from scratch a relational database that works on GPU chips. These are the chips that work in, run in gaming machines, that instead of having like a duo core like from Intel, 2 or 4 processors, these chips have 2,500 to 4,000 processors per chip, and Kinetica had customers that were running on 500 chips running in parallel, 700,000 processing elements running simultaneously on billions of rows of data that it's ingesting. And we thought that was a big idea. They were landing, just with founders selling the products, at $1 million per year annual contracts. And so we said, this is very interesting. Those GPUs are going to take advantage of Moore's Law to keep up with the flood of data, but the Oracle can't rewrite their software to do this. They'll have to start from scratch if they wanted. This company has a head start, already has big customers like U.S. Postal Service with almost an 8-figure business. We hopped in and co-led the deal with a large investment with Meritech, who is actually one of those late-stage investors. We co-led it with them, and we're an early-stage investor. So we had conviction, they had conviction, and that's an example of one we have high hopes for, and it's that company I mentioned that we did all the executive team recruiting for, and it's off to the races.
So, Gary, what do you think of unicorn mania? Are you chasing unicorns? What's your analysis of the Valley's desire for unicorns?
Yeah, well, we've had, we don't chase unicorns. We actually try to, grow unicorns. You start with a, just kind of thinking that have the opportunity to be the initial co-lead the deal on MuleSoft. We start with things that look like mules, and we try to grow them so they have, you know, the unicorn thing sticking out of them over time, which that company had the opportunity to turn a mule into a unicorn. Yeah, so when we select companies, we try to find companies that have the opportunity to grow into be billion-dollar-plus companies. But of course, they're all starting very young. We don't chase companies that are already, you know, at multi-hundred-million-dollar valuations, or putting money.
But I think the real question I think the real question in that is, what kind of TAM is it that is interesting for you? Because, you know, given where we are in the history of the startup industry, the technology industry, and so forth, there are billion-dollar opportunities which you need to build a unicorn-level company. But there are also many opportunities that are, you know, let's say $200, $300, $500 million TAM, which are, you know, smaller opportunities, probably better suited for acquisition exits.
Yeah, okay. I understand your question now. So we, from a portfolio standpoint, if you have a $300 million fund like we do, we'd like each individual company to have the opportunity, if successful, if very successful, to return the entire fund. Because at that point, you've given the limited partners back their money and they haven't made any. And then the rest of the portfolio can, you know, try to double or triple that portfolio. It's just, to be honest with you, it's not an easy task. You need to have that one company in the portfolio that can return the entire fund for the venture economics to work. Not all of them are going to get there, and therefore, you know, some are going to exit at that $300 to $500 million. Some are going to exit at 100, and some are going to be zeros. And you, as a venture fund, you need to return 2 to 3 times the investment to the LPs if you want to continue to raise money over the next, you know, 2 decades. And that's the way it works. So those lower outcomes are fine, and they add to the portfolio. But if you start out saying, oh, this could be a $200 to $300 million company, and you do all your companies, you will never, you reduce your opportunity of having those, what you call the unicorns, that really make the portfolio and are required for a large fund to return. Now, having said that, I think this is a really good place where angel money and seed money exists, because at that stage, there's not enough data about the market opportunity, the product market fit, the team and how they're working together to really know whether you have a $50 million opportunity or a billion dollar plus opportunity. And that gives actually the entrepreneur some flexibility, because before they decide to raise venture, and what I mean is that $5 million round, they should know that that venture capitalist is looking for that billion-plus company opportunity. And instead of pitching, unless the entrepreneur really feels that it has that opportunity and is willing to go along for a 5 to 10 year ride behind that opportunity, maybe they should just keep raising seed and angel money and keep the burn low, so that they have the flexibility to exit at a $50 million or $100 million exit with a lot of ownership, have a good outcome for themselves individually, and then move on to the next opportunity that could be that billion-dollar opportunity. I think some entrepreneurs can get trapped by raising money and telling a big story when they don't necessarily have conviction themselves, and when they could be spending their time on better opportunities. So I will make a few comments for the audience to understand what you're saying and put it in perspective, just because that we have all kinds of entrepreneurs here, and, you know, people working on a
smaller TAM opportunity, have plenty of conviction. If you're the market leader in a space that is a niche where you are the leader of in a $200 million TAM opportunity, you can have plenty of conviction, build a beautiful piece of software that solves the problem, and build a great business. The issue is you need to do it more capital efficiently and not raise huge amounts of money, and hence you should, if you want to raise money, you need to work with funds that are smaller funds. And the truth is, right now, the venture market is flooded with micro VCs. There are about 700 micro VCs, and I constantly talk to investors who have raised $15 million funds, $30 million funds, $50 million funds, $75 million funds, and that's more your sweet spot. If you're trying to do a capital efficient venture where you're going to sell this company to a larger player, after building it up to a point for, $50 million or $100 million, that's a different strategy. The funding strategy is a different strategy, and you're not going to, in that case, you should not be raising money from a $300 million fund like Canvas. That's the equation that you need to understand. And then what I see a lot in the industry, working with entrepreneurs, is that entrepreneurs do spray and pray, and they kind of go hit up. Like if you have this as your investment thesis, don't go hit up Andreessen Horowitz, because that's not what they do. So, but there is this body of VCs who would be working with you, who would be willing to work with you, but you have to go to the right audience and not just chase the big names or the bigger funds. This is a very poorly understood area of fundraising and it's understandable. It's quite complex. All this stuff is complex, and the entrepreneurs, especially those who are doing it for the first time, it's a lot of complex perspectives. So that's why I just wanted to elaborate a little bit on what you said, Gary.
Yeah, Suman, I think you said it extremely well. Of course, there are some opportunities where the TAM is zero, so because you're inventing a new market, and those can be the best, absolutely the best businesses if you can basically invent it, have a high share of a small market, and then have that market grow into be an enormous market. But
Gary, I think
there are a few of those.
You have another question from the audience. Let me read that out. Do you have thoughts on how to close the gap existing between male-led ventures versus female-led ventures?
Between male-led and female-led?
Yes.
That's interesting. I mentioned one of my partners is a female, one of our three. She's a co-founder. And actually was our best performing partner in our prior fund, so has earned it. And also 2 years or 3 years, I can't remember, on the Midas list, and keeps moving up the ranks. We like women entrepreneurs, and we actually have probably an outsized number of female-led entrepreneurs in our portfolio. Vida, Zola would be examples. And we don't really differentiate between a female and a male. I would say just from a math standpoint, there's many fewer female entrepreneurs that come in and that are raising money from us. So, and I think that could be because most of the businesses that we see are basically a core tech team, and there's fewer females that are graduating from getting their bachelor's, master's, and PhDs in, say, computer science. And so the number one thing that could improve that would be more females choosing, let's say, computer science, but engineering in general as their majors, because that is where the huge correlation is the highest correlation between our founders is their technical undergrad.
Yeah, I fully agree with this comment, and which is why I actually don't pound on this topic of why are there so few female founders, technology founders getting venture funded? Because they're not founding a lot of technology companies. And why is that? Because there are not enough women with computer science backgrounds or electrical engineering backgrounds, and that's a reality. The universities are trying to address that reality, but it is still a reality, and until that equation tips, it's no point pounding on the venture capitalists, and we'll never reach equality because venture capitalists are tasked with making money. I think the bigger question, which you have answered, I think for the industry, the bigger question is there a bias against women entrepreneurs? And that question, people have very different perspectives on the topic. And it's a much bigger topic that I don't want to open up right now.
Well, I'll tell you that, just to be completely honest, within our firm, when we're talking about a woman-led entrepreneur, there's no discussion. There's no discussion about, classic, oh, is this entrepreneur going to leave and go have a baby or something? Never have those discussions. The only thing that I would say is when I meet with younger female, like Stanford's nearby, and they have a program called She Code, and we try to support those events. And we have women in tech events here, and we try to nurture. We tell them, why wait to start a company? These days, there's a lot of people start companies straight out of school, or even leave graduate programs to start programs. Why not you? Go do it now. You're in your 20s. You have 10 years, running room where you can just focus on do it now. So that'd be my advice. These days, there's enough mentoring networks like yourself and advisors. No founders have all the quivers, all the arrows, and all the toolkit tools they need to be a successful entrepreneur. They go out and they figure it out. And the core strength you need is that product orientation and that vision, and you can build around everything else you need around that. So just go do it.
Great. Well, Gary, thank you. It's a pleasure to have you. And I do have a company that will probably fit your thesis. So after we finish this session, I will email you the details.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure being on with you. Thank you for having me, and good luck to all your entrepreneurs that might be listening to this.
Thank you.
Hello.
All right, folks, we're going to switch to the mentoring part of the session today. Remember, this is a working session, right? We are going to work on your business, strategize, and figure out what you're struggling with, what your questions are, try to address those. And it's a safe place. You don't need to be defensive. You don't need to be worried about what you say. Let your head down and let's just work through your issues. You could disagree with what I tell you. That's okay. That's your prerogative. It's your venture, your strategy. You will decide what you want to do. Listen, though, because this is what I'm going to tell you is based on experience and perspective, and then process. Analyze, process. You're smart people. You can analyze, you can process. One thing you have to acknowledge in your strategizing is that not all businesses can raise money, not all businesses should raise money, and raising money doesn't guarantee success. For instance, what we were just talking about, if you have a business that has a smaller TAM and you raise a lot of money, then you basically put yourself out of an exit path. And that kind of situations create lots of problems. So you're going to really need to find the right strategy. If you choose to raise money, you have to find the right strategy, the right amount of money, and so forth. So these are things that are complicated, but will help you figure those things out. So let's dive in. Mark McChiery of pathmarks.com from Cape Town, South Africa. Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks very much, Ramona. I'll forgive the McChiery thing. It's quite a difficult one to get your tongue around. I think a lot of what Gary had talked about in the last session sort of feeds into what I would like to share with you today. First of all, just anecdotally, the unicorn is the national animal of Scotland, where my McChiery surname hails from. So there's an affinity there, just to get us started. And then secondly, he touched on quite intuitively on data and the pervasive and radical evolution of data. And I think that it's fundamental to hold this in the back of your mind as I begin. And so it's a tremendous privilege for me to have this opportunity to chat with you and talk you through Passmark.com. Effectively, what we have on the screen right now is effectively our massive transformative process, our value proposition, in that we believe, after years of work, that Passmark is now ready to deploy in a commercial fashion because it lies at the core of web standards. And web standards is quite a lengthy discussion to be had, but I'll try and unpack it as briefly as possible. And specifically at the intersection of trust, data, code, and software development. If we look at what's happening in the internet today, with the pervasive distribution of fake news, and at Davos this year, digital trust and cybersecurity was touted as the most commonly used phrase of words. So I think that even though we began this journey 4.5 years ago in terms of developing this product and service, it is now coming to market at the right time to tick a lot of boxes for for those that see a need. And again, it's almost serendipitous that this was created because our founders are digital media developers. They developed applications and platforms and websites and integrations. And the problem that they had was that there was no single web standard. They had to go to a plethora of resources to go and check their code and the integration and the latency and get the latest version and iteration of code. And so what was born from that was a platform that ties everything together. We don't for a second suggest that we've invented anything new. In fact, Henry Ford was once quoted as saying, "I've invented nothing new. All I've done is efficiently assembled into a motor vehicle centuries of innovations before me." And that's what we've done. We've taken what is web standard code in terms of compatibility of devices, compatibility of language, performance as it relates to a performance of a website, the content. Everybody's sort of tied into SEO because that was the buzzword, and everybody was an SEO authority a couple of years ago, and that's evolving. And more importantly today, security. So we tie together and have parity to all of the modern and latest iterative versions of tests across all four of those. And I think fundamentally the most important part of this is that we are an open sourced environment. We do have a commercial value proposition, but if anybody wants to just go and have a quick squiz at our site, I've put 2 links up there. One is, Shimona, is your website, and the other one is Amazon. And I thought I'd put this up because your score outranks Amazon, and I think that's kudos to you guys. But effectively, we have all of this code in an open source repository, and it's that open source community that is fundamental to solving the internet's problems. So our target customers is anybody with access to broadband and the internet. And that kind of is where things get a little bit tricky and weird, because it's quite easy to get sort of distracted with different types of narratives, because for a web builder, whether you're a professional web builder or an amateur web builder using a do-it-yourself platform like Wix or any of the other ones, you need access to something that can test your entire site on all of those elements. If you're a website owner, you're primarily concerned with, am I going to be at risk of being breached, to take all of the data? And secondly, am I performing at a rate where I'm accessible to more customers? And this is predicated on our full understanding that historically business was built on a scarcity model. And in today's economy, businesses are built on an accessibility model. So the more sticky, predictable, and accessible you are as a business, the more tickets you have into this lottery of market share. The pain points that we've identified is that what Gary so succinctly referred to, and he referred to Moore's law, and I think Moore's law has kind of reached the end of his run. and it's been overtaken by Ray Kurzweil's law of accelerating returns. The World Wide Web evolves every second. The internet has never been this fast in its entire history, and from tomorrow it will never ever be this slow again. And what we have is we have conglomerates and giants feeding into this internet, and the internet is effectively now the central nervous system of the world. And every time you add a new tablet or a computer or a service onto that, you're just making this ecosystem much larger. And the pain we've identified is that there is no single point of reference that in an open source sort of repository and access capacity for anybody to check everything on their site. And so if you can just go to the next slide, we are built on the philosophy of an unbiased and web standards process where it's decentralized, democratized, and more importantly, it's universally applicable and transparent. So we don't write all of the code that you're testing your site against. We rely on the developer community at large. GitHub's got just under 26 million registered developers, and any new layer that's added or any tweak or evolution on the internet's code gets added into our repository as the latest de facto sort of standard of coding language, and that's essentially what we test against. So we believe that it is. Yeah, sure.
So you're saying you test websites for security, device compatibility, performance, and content SEO issues. Does that mean that you're testing all this against, like Google's algorithm, for instance, which changes constantly?
Absolutely. So we are constantly updating the code repositories within our open source repository, and that update comes automatically in an elastic and automatically scalable fashion from anything new that ever gets added to the internet. And that's
so if a site is getting penalized by Google from a, let's say, SEO perspective, you would be able to identify that and provide recommendations on what to do? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely, and if you have an opportunity during or after this, if you click on one of those embedded hyperlinks in the chat that I've shared, you'll be able to see how our interface breaks it down and allows you to drill down into the elements, everything from performance to security, telling you exactly where the critical errors are, where the errors are, where there's warnings that you could do something to improve this, and more importantly, where there's alerts or things that you should bear in mind that need some attention as it becomes more important. So, for example, Firefox came out with a new browser recently, and we tested immediately as soon as Firefox is released and all of those release notes get added into our repository. We test against it. It doesn't impact on your score until it is it's verified by the design as now released to market. So. We're quite excited that we've even now developed a progressive web app plugin for iTunes. This is the next space, and again, the code is not by our IP. Our IP is how we tie it all together, how we crawl the internet, pull the latest code references, and then test on request. By anybody that uses it. Because it's open sourced, our one-page test, which is your landing page, is free for humans forever. We want to get to a point where we are recognized as a web standard. We were even joking the other day here in our dungeon that we wanted to do a development, say, hi Alexa, please check the security pass mark score of this site before I enter my credit card details. Those are the sort of the user examples, but we're not going to make money from that. That's just going to enhance our relevance within the internet community. Where we see our true value proposition is when we start embedding within platforms like Google, Microsoft, Amazon Web Services, Salesforce, for example. And we've already walked quite a long road with some big ones. I'll talk you through them in a couple of slides. The other thing is from the corporate part, what came out of Davos is that if you're a global company and have had a breach and don't report it within 24 hours, you could be fined up to 5% of your global revenue. So what keeps the global CEOs up at night is cybersecurity. And if there is a metric where you can provide audit trail.
In the interest of time, Mark, let's go to where are you? So customer validation is something that I'd like to know about. I'd like to know your business model, where, what stage are you at? Tell me a bit more about, do you have customers right now?
Yeah, so we've just come out of a beta phase. We actually are launching this Monday coming. We've been developing and designing and growing together with the community at large up until now. We've deployed within Cloudflare and tested elements like Nasdaq, who own quite a bit of Tencent. The Cool Oaks in New York, Spies and Assassins, gave us a run for our money testing their code lines. And one of our associate contributors here in Cape Town, they look after the Thomas Cook account globally and have also integrated with our API into that DevOps environment. So they're able to not only test what's live on the internet, but they integrate it into their software development lifecycle in new dev that they can test while they're building something from scratch and from new. And then in terms of Lighthouse, which I mentioned briefly earlier, Paul Irish gave us an endorsement on Twitter the other day, which gave us a little bump in the adrenaline and really just reaffirmed that Passmark has the potential to sustainably contribute to web development going forward.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So where we are right now, planning on going commercially, we are a subscription as a service. Our entry point, the free one-page test is free, as I said. We're offering a $5 monthly subscription to a sort of a general user, like somebody who owns their own website, with, like a Wix site or a WordPress site, etc. There's a $200 subscription, which is aimed more towards the small little dev houses where we integrate with our API and CLI to allow them to test as they develop, and not just before they push the button and go live, which we all know is where the biggest frustration comes, because you don't pick up on errors done right at the beginning of that software development life cycle. And then we've successfully deployed a proof of concept at a listed corporate here in Cape Town, with the view of providing them a verifiable audit trail to address their audit requirements in terms of vulnerability and reaction to vulnerabilities in a way that it proves that.
What about competition? There are other companies that do this kind of testing and audit of security levels of different websites. How do you compare with the ones who do that? Have you done a detailed comparative analysis?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I want to reaffirm my original assertion, saying that we have not invented anything new. We have taken a collection of agreed web standards.
No, that's not the question. The question is, who is, when somebody is trying to find an auditor, who else are you competing with?
So when you're looking at performance, there's SpeedCurve, SiteBeam, HubSpot's Web Checker, Google PageSpeed. When you're looking at SSL, there's SSL Labs, W3CE for compatibility and CSS, and then you've got the compatibility of devices and accessibility for people who are using the internet as a blind person or a person who can't hear, or whatever the case is. There's also a standard there for creating sites that allow you to be accessible by people that don't have, obviously all senses intact. So there's standards, iterative standards for every single element, but there's no one standard that ties it all together. And secondly, what's most important is that every single one of these standards have a commercial price tag attached to it, which ranges from digestible to just really expensive in the grand scheme of things, and is designed to take all of that data and feed into what their core business is. So, like for example, and without denigrating, I'm just using it as a comparative purpose, HubSpot's Page Checker simply checks SEO and then recommends into HubSpot who they should be targeting to go and optimize SEO with, just as an example. So effectively, we've taken every single known web standard and put it into an open source repository that will be curated and developed by the people that actually code and create new websites and new layers to the internet and information. So,
Mark, this is an area where we have hold on. This is an area where we have a lot of expertise and a lot of relationships that you could benefit from. I would need to understand your product better, and I would need to understand and be convinced that it works. But if it does, this is something that we could add a tremendous amount of value to. So you're right. There is probably, because you're doing it for the first time, there's a lot of things that you don't know, you need to learn. It's, as Gary was saying, and I agree with that, it's not difficult to learn these things. You just have to work on learning those things. And that's why we do 1 million by 1 million, because we know how to teach you what you need to learn. But you have a very promising business, and I'm very interested in what you're doing. I think it's an interesting, and I'm very happy to see that you're doing it out of Cape Town, South Africa, which is excellent. I always love to see interesting, promising business from places that are far outside the Silicon Valley, highly concentrated innovation center. So congratulations.
Thank you very much. I just want one qualifying point there is that we recognize that the value of this type of product isn't limited to Africa or South Africa, and it's not the best place to spread the news about this community. So we've taken steps and have incorporated in Delaware in anticipation of our commercial go-live date. Our IP is also going to be registered with our incorporation in Delaware. We are hosted within the Kubernetes environment. So we're ready for a global perspective.
For sure.
Yes.
And in terms of building the company, eventually you are probably going to be building, at least you may keep your engineering team in Cape Town, but you would be most likely building some degree of sales and marketing in America and so on and so forth. We'll figure all those things out. So structurally, you're going to probably end up with a U.S. Cape Town structure, and that's fine. People are doing U.S. or Silicon Valley, and some other destination, some other location all over the place. So that's fine. That's just fine.
Yeah. We're in a global connected economy. That's important that we have reach into that global connected economy, and we understand that.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Very, very interesting presentation. All right, folks.
Thank you very much for your time.
It's
been a tremendous privilege. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I will explain how to use 1 million by 1 million in a moment. So it looks like Mohammed is having difficulty dialing in. His slides are here, but he's not, because he's where is Mohammed? Where is he trying to dial from? Anyway, regardless, if you like what we're doing here, folks, please refer serious entrepreneurs into 1M by 1M. And serious entrepreneurs means people who are willing to commit 7 to 10 years of their life at least to build a significant company. It's a lot of work. It takes a lot of time and a lot of years. So it's not something that you can just, wing it. So don't come with expectations that you're going to wing it. Come with expectations that you're going to be, slogging for a lot of years and building something worthwhile. Those are the kinds of entrepreneurs that we like to work with. All the resources are at 1M1M.com. There is a terrific blog that you will learn a lot from just by following that blog. And then there's the Entrepreneur Journeys book series, of which we have 12 volumes, and you can also use that as your learning point, starting point for learning. And you double-click down on various topics like bootstrapping with a paycheck, bootstrapping using services, billion-dollar unicorns, Carnival in the Cloud, that's a book about cloud computing, etc. These are case study-based books. Each book has 12 to 16 case studies. Feminism is all about women entrepreneurs, case studies of women entrepreneurs. So all of these you can learn from. And then you have these free roundtables week after week after week. We have every single recording on the YouTube channel of 1M by 1M. You can learn from those as well. It's a great learning material. If you just listen to those, if you have a commute, you know, let's say you have 45 minutes of commute or an hour of commute each way, this is a very good thing to listen to on commute. We also have a podcast channel that you can listen to on commute. The full acceleration program from 1 million by 1 million is 1M1M Premium. And that is a $1,000 annual membership fee for full methodology guidance. We'll teach you everything that you need to learn about this business. We have extensive curriculum material, over 300 hours worth of curriculum material growing every day, and it's a very powerful material through which we have trained a lot of entrepreneurs at this point to become successful. We also have a lot of relationships in the industry, so business development is something that we will help you with, whether it's potential customers, channel partners, investors, media, analysts, all of those are in our network. We will help you with financing. We will help you with consistent and regular mentoring, whatever you call it, mentoring, coaching, strategy, consulting, whatever, but you will need that project-based coaching, and we'll give you that in our private, in the premium program. So the other thing that I recommend is go do the self-assessment. The questionnaire is on the website, available for free. Ask yourselves these questions. And if you get stuck on methodology, if you need to study methodology, study curriculum, just go sign up for 1M1M Basic and plug your knowledge gaps in terms of methodology. Methodology is important. And methodology today is quite well understood. We can help you learn methodology. And it's completely, you just have to, you know, let's say budget 50 hours in a month, in your first month, to digest the core curriculum of 1 million by 1 million, and you will be much better off than the other entrepreneur who hasn't done something like this to upgrade their methodology knowledge. And methodology knowledge is something that we strongly recommend that you upgrade and get a framework around what you're doing, how to know how to prioritize, how to put one foot before the other. So dig around on the website. There's tons of information about what to expect from premium, what to expect from basic, etc. Lots of videos, video FAQs, the detailed description of the curriculum. We are doing this program on a case study basis. So the whole curriculum is built on top of 800+ case studies. 50+ of those are unicorns, 400+ venture-funded companies, 350+ bootstrap success stories. And you're learning from other people who've done it before. And that's very powerful and very inspiring. Our methodology is lean, capital-efficient bootstrap startups. You get to a certain level of validation, and then you can raise money or not. You don't have to raise money. If your company doesn't warrant that you need to raise money, we don't force you to raise money. We will help you and coach you how to build a business without financing as well. But if you do decide to raise money, and if you do believe that, if we believe that you are ready to be funded, we will introduce you to investors. You know, one of our companies that is right now going through financing, I have introduced this company to 36 VCs in the last couple of weeks, and he's got 22 meetings out of those, which is an incredible hit rate. And part of it is because he has followed the principles that we have taught, which is bootstrap first, raise money later, and he's going out to raise money with significant revenue. He's already crossed $1 million in revenue and has significant enterprise customers. So the methodology works, the philosophy works, the network works, everything pretty much at this point works. You need to do your part to take advantage of the network, the methodology, and the learning, and we are pretty confident that you will be able to make great progress. So in March, we have 4 more roundtables, you know, pretty much every week. We also have rendezvous, in-person rendezvous at Cafe Boroni in Menlo Park. And those are also, there are 4 more left in March. Those are Wednesday evenings. And that's it. We are ready for further discussions, call-ins and further discussions. So questions, comments, issues that you want discussed. Let me also introduce you to Irina Patterson. If you have questions about the program, please feel free to contact Irina, and she'll be happy to talk to you further, answer your questions. Anybody, questions, comments, issues? What are your roadblocks? Where are you joining from? Tell us about you. Introduce yourselves. Who are you? Where are you dialing from? What is your project? What are you struggling with? What are your aspirations? Feel free to use the public chat now. Set it to send to all participants, and let's network a bit and get to know you. That's great, Raj. I'm looking forward to hearing from you on what you're doing, and if you choose to join the program, to work with you. You're a developer working with Oracle India. Okay, excellent. So Oracle has its Spring Challenge, Spring 1M1M Challenge running right now. So you should apply if you want to be in the program. You should apply for a scholarship to the program from Oracle. Oracle employees have the privilege of Oracle-funded participation in the program. Anybody else? Questions? Comments? No? All right, folks. In that case, I'm going to wrap up today, and we'll see you next week. Do come to anything that you feel like coming to, whether it's the rendezvous or the public roundtables. And if you're a premium member, come to the private roundtables. Peter Joseph is also from Oracle, working at headquarters, came to know about this through internal mailing. Can you please let us know more about this partnership? Well, you know, Oracle runs its entire intrapreneurship program on top of the 1Mby1M platform. So twice a year, Oracle offers scholarships to the 1Mby1M program, and you should go listen to the kickoff video, which explains the program, and it has all the FAQs and so forth. So spend some time learning how to apply and what are the expectations. And then go ahead and fill out the applications, submit the applications within the deadline. I would say leading up to the application deadline, attend these roundtables so that you can, immerse yourselves in the program and understand how it works and so forth, and get inspired, and then apply. If you have any questions specifically, you can ask now. I'll address them. But you do have a full body of explanation and FAQs and everything that is available internally within Oracle. That's not available externally, but since you are at Oracle, you will have everything. So, Peter, in your situation, you're getting this privilege sponsored by your employer to learn the methodology of entrepreneurship. I think you should take advantage of that, apply for the program, learn. If hopefully you will win, and then you will learn the methodology. You spend a year learning the methodology and developing something within Oracle. It will give you a much, much better perspective with which to navigate your career path. Everybody who has gone through this program has gone through a tremendous mental shift and tremendous just mental model orientation development and orientation change just by going through this program. So it's a very deep program that will impact you for life. It's immersive, it's a lot of work. So join the program only if you're willing to put in the level of work that we demand. It's not something that you can basically skim on and get value out of. Any other questions before we wrap up, folks, or any other comments? You will find all of that in the Oracle internal repository. The person to contact is Susan Huffman at Oracle. She is the program administrator. And there are videos of success stories. There are all kinds of material that Oracle will offer you, but you have to go to the internal materials within Oracle for that. But there are fantastic projects coming out of this program within Oracle right now. As we speak, we have 2 projects that are billion-dollar ideas, one that is a $500 million idea, and it's really powerful what's happening inside Oracle through the program right now. And your career, if you choose to build your career inside Oracle, you'll get a massive level of visibility and boost in your career. If you go through the program and become successful, management, higher management will get to know you, and you will be considered for much bigger leadership roles. So it's a big boost to the career path also. Okay, folks, that's it for today then. I will see you next week, and keep going, keep making lots of progress, and we'll reconvene next week. Bye.